everybody. My name is Santiago I am the policy officer at the European Partnership for Democracy, and I'm very happy to welcome you today and introduce to you as the moderator for this session on youth, new technologies, and democracy. As probably every session today, I would like to begin by thanking the government of South Korea for providing us the space to collaborate, to speak, and to exchange information, contacts. Of course, thanking the organizers of today, which are the PEC platform, International IDEA, the Open Government Partnership, the OECD, and the Communities of Democracy. Of course, we'd like to thank as well the Global Democracy Coalition and the Club de Madrid. So yesterday featured a lot of speeches from governments and ministers on the power and dangers of technology. And today we're trying to bring a youth angle to these discussions. So I'm very happy to introduce to you our distinguished panelists for today. So first, on the other end of the stage, we have Jokate Mwegelo. She is the Secretary General of the ruling party Women's Wing in Tanzania. She brings her perspective on mobilizing youth for political participation, especially young women, by drawing on her own experiences in her country. Then we have Alejandra Arburola. She is a diplomatic and consular advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Costa Rica. Her experiences focus more on diplomacy and gender, so she's going to be bringing that perspective to this conversation. Then we have Joanna Sue Henley Rampas. Joanna is a graduate research assistant and a PhD candidate at the University Malaysia Sarawak. Her research on the impact of lowering the voting age in Malaysia will surely provide inspirations for us all today. Jokate, Alejandra, and Joanna are all members of Club de Madrid's network of young decision makers, and also joining us today is Nerima Wako. Nerima is the executive director of Siasa Place in Kenya. Her organization works to engage young Kenyans in formal politics, so that will be a very practical example for today. Nerima and Siasa Place are a trusted partner of the Youth Democracy Cohort, which is also very present here today in the day 2 of the Summit for Democracy. Having said all that, let's begin this discussion by focusing on a topic that I'm sure you're all very familiar with, social media. So social media has played a key role in your life and political careers, yet is a major concern for politicians. It's a major issue in the agenda of policymakers. So maybe can we just begin, maybe Jokate? So how can youth really contribute to the use of social networks as a positive platform for information sharing and the strengthening of democratic processes?
Well, thank you. As introduced, my name is Jokate Mwegelo. I am currently holding the position of the Secretary General of the Women's Wing of the party that is running government in Tanzania. Social media has been pivotal in my career as a young female leader. I have been able to use the space to advocate for different campaigns that are personal to me, but also to our government, that include education, women empowerment, and youth participation. And to be quite frank, it hasn't been easy because social media, as much as it is an avenue for us to give out information, showcase what we do, but it's also been an avenue for others to vent, to misinform, to frustrate, especially women who are online, to extend their frustrations on women and to degrade women. So it's a very hostile, it's become a very hostile environment, and it requires one to be extremely brave and to be able to fight that against all odds. But I'm very grateful for the background. My parents instilled in me the values of believing in myself and in what I believe in. And I tend to use that to also encourage my fellow young women to take up space and not be put down by the negative feedback they get online, which is becoming a serious case as of recent. As much as we want to use social media to pass out information, we cannot not say that there are others who use social media to, share their frustrations and to put women down. So it requires one to be able to navigate around all these and to just stay your ground. And I'm very grateful that the government has put in place different laws that have been enacted to punish those who use social media negatively and to empower especially women and youth to be able to use that space bravely and courageously. So yeah, so for me, it's been a space for me to be able to advocate for what I do, showcase my work, and gain confidence in what I do, and for people to be able to appreciate that women have a contribution once they're put into places of political leadership.
Yes, Nerima, thank you very much, Kate. Nerima, your organization has done quite a lot of work as well on social media in democratic processes. What perspectives can you provide in this conversation here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. Thanks so much for the opportunity. And I think it's almost afternoon, good afternoon, or maybe / almost morning, not sure. So my organization started about 9 years ago, will be 10 next year. It started on X, formerly Twitter, and we started as a platform to engage on national issues as young people, and then it evolved because we felt that we needed young people as representatives within government. And so we started now evolving toward political campaigns and campaigning around issues and advocating around particular issues. So when it comes to social media, it's definitely a double-edged sword because we've seen how campaigns have led to policy changes, young people being elected, but we've also been trolled, we've also been harassed online, and that is the negative side of social media. And some of the campaigns that we have highlighted, a lot of our campaigns are on accountability. So as much as we've supported, young politicians to enter, we still follow up with them. Now that you're in there, what are you doing for your constituents? And so we have a campaign called Fame and Shame. So when they do something great, we celebrate them on social media. We'll do a post, we'll say, congratulations, you've been recognized, the president recognizes you. And then when they do something bad, we'll have a shame wall where we take an image of something that maybe they did and they were supposed to follow up with something, and they actually respond to the shame so fast because they want you to take it down. So as soon as they go and fix it, they're like, okay, now take it down. Now celebrate me again. And so that's how we have used social media a lot in regards to following up, advocating, and also supporting young people to join politics.
Thank you, Nerima. Alejandra and Joanna, you have experience as young women in formal politics, in institutions. How do you feel social media has influenced your careers, either positively or negatively?
Thank you for your question, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Well, when I was in the university, we started a political party, and in that moment, we saw that social media was very important to speak with young people. So in that moment, we launched a very nice campaign with very nice image, and that gave us the student government. After that, we, as a group of, 15 people, I think so, we went to a political party who was running the election in 2014. At the moment, we were a very young group with this guy who was unknown for everybody in Costa Rica. He was a history teacher or professor at the university. And we started to work with these tools to let young people know him. So we started to work with a website. It wasn't a website. It was like a profile in Facebook in that year. And we had this profile for memes. I don't know how to say it in English, meme also. So we start to speak about politics using memes. And that's a very nice way to speak with young people about politics. So we start to saying, I remembered that this person that now is he was the president of Costa Rica, Luis Guillermo Solís. He was very near to us, the young people, because he said, okay, I need to know how to speak with you guys. I need to know how people is going to engage with our political campaign. After that, we had a lot of pages in Facebook. Now in Instagram, there's one that is super famous in Costa Rica that is just memes to talk about politics. So I think that's a good way to speak with young people about serious problems and serious perspective that what we want and why it is important to speak about politics. Also, when we were in government, where we were already there, we start to use some tools, for example, Twitter, to denounce when we, for example, I was on the Commission on Human Rights, and when someone wants to move forward one proposal that was very dangerous for, I don't know, for young people, or indigenous people, or maybe women, we used Twitter for denounce, and it was very a good tool to let people know who was the person who was leading that activity, or who was the person who was leading this proposal. So I think social media has been super useful for our political story, but it is also, sometimes it is difficult to know how to use social media without being exposed as a young woman. So I think that's a very good thing to speak, but I'll give the
Yeah,
floor
very
to
quickly,
Joanna.
flying from Costa Rica to Malaysia.
Thank you,
Santiago.
Santiago. Yes. Yeah. So, okay, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for being here with all the strong ladies together with me and the panelists, and to as well everyone here who is in this congregation. Before I sort of speak about my experiences being in active politics for the last 8 years and how social media has really impacted my political career. So first we have to see what is political participation, right? And this is the essence of modern democracy, and it is necessary for us to maintaining its legitimacy. You know, it ensures the government's accountability. It also legitimizes governance through citizens' involvement, right? And there is a paradigm shift when it comes to political engagement in this modern era, where it has facilitated, it's facilitated by social media. Now we hear concepts like cyberspace politics, online political participation. I mean, these are the things that we've never heard during our parents' time, right? Everything was traditional. So this signifies a new era of digital literacy and creative communications. So how does this influence the youth, right? So social media significantly influences the young voters. So being, during my 8 years of political, being in active politics, I have gone through 3 elections in Malaysia. Yes, a very vibrant country. And very democratic, I would say, in that sense. 2 general elections and 1 state election. And in the next couple of months, or in the next 1 year to come, we are also looking at the state election from where I come from, which is Sabah, right? So again, you know, as we have listened to all the keynote speeches yesterday, that this 2024, 2025 will be a moment where there will be lots of elections that will be happening, and that includes my state too. So we have seen that political parties and politicians have actually used this a lot in making, to disseminate information and making young voters as their focal point of political campaigns. And in Malaysia, with the amendment in 2019 of Undi 18, and I'm glad to say that together with us in this hall is the co-founder of Undi 18. She's here with us. I had a brief conversation with her. How did you do it? You made a difference. You made, political landscape a change, in Malaysia, and we made history. And all this is because of the young, the new power of this generation that we have, which is us young people. So I would like to give you an example, put you in perspective how social media has actually sort of influenced the election votes that happened in 2022. Now, for example, in Malaysia, TikTok has proved its political salience, to which the Undi 18, so maybe I could just say what is Undi 18? It's basically lowering the age, voting age of 21 to 18 years old, right? And by voting this, and also we have automatic registration, and therefore with this being amended, and we had a sudden spike of 5.6 million of new voters between 18 to 25 years old, yeah? And if you look at it in a bigger picture, well, in Malaysia, 40 is considered pretty young. It's considered pretty young. So, we have an approximately 15.5 million voters between 18 to 40 years old. So with these young passive voters, new voters in the 2022 election. So this was the time when we saw the impact of lowering the age to 18 years old. And it's so apt that the research that I'm doing right now is also to see the impact that, you know, how did this, are these young people prepared in making decisions, in also being in the democratic process. So it seems that, you know, the young people, they had no political affiliations. They had no voting histories. So basically, you know, all these political parties, politicians, I would say, have sought their support in such uncertain times. And this is why TikTok and the video campaigns were very prominent during and after the campaign. And I have to say that social media had actually swayed the youth's political behavior. You know, who are they going to vote for and whatsoever. So social media has a substantial impact on political participation. And in Malaysia, we have seen that there is a transition to see that they are moving from traditional media to alternative media, which is social media. This is what we've seen now, right? And we've also seen that newspapers or, you know, the news have actually moved towards 1-minute content snippets. I mean, we are living in the generation where everything has to be fast, right? And with a very short span of focus. That, I think that includes all of us. Everything we want is online. So basically, you know, this has seen as an alternative media. And maybe for those of you who might not familiar with the geography in Malaysia, Malaysia is divided into two. We are separated by South China Sea. I come from the island, East Malaysia, which is Borneo Island, and as well for the West Malaysia are the 13 states of Malaysia, and that's where you have Kuala Lumpur there, right? And the political dynamics for these two regions are absolutely different, right? So I am speaking on my experiences as a young politician from this region. And studies have, this is something that I feel that I perhaps have to highlight, and I believe that other countries, especially when I looked at it, it's mostly on the global south of this region, not much on the north part of this world, but the global south, where we see that there is a lack of young participation or youth participation in politics. So just to give you a perspective on this, a recent study that we have done to show that they are about 83.5% preferring to get their news, all the information via social media. We're talking about young people. But only 23% are actually participating in online political groups. So there is a difference between you just looking at, you know, political news, but whether you are actually being actively participating in it, right? And again, there is a research gap that we have looked at. You know, does this then, is the 23.4% will translate into votes, or the 83% will translate into votes? So this is something that we as young leaders will have to find a way of how to go about it. So again, you know, with these young people who wouldn't have the experiences, the young voters, for example. And this is where social media is not only seen as a double-edged sword, but it's also a multifaceted sword, where, you know, not only they will see, they'll get information, but there's also, as I agree with what Joe Kate has said, that you can get, you know, there's misinformation, disinformation. So we as young leaders, maybe a little bit more, I can see you are. This thing about politicians, they speak a lot. But yeah, so what we have used, I mean, as politicians, and it actually works effectively in Malaysia, is that content creation really has an impact. This is where how we disseminate, to educate democratic values, and to also promote digital literacy. I think this is something that's very important, and there is a lot of space for us to look into this. And it is important, I think, one more thing, that is for us to humanize digital interaction. Right? So this is another thing that I feel, as being a young politician, we lack of human touch now. Although, yes, I agree that social media will do help, but there has to be a certain extent that here, in Malaysia, we call this thing turun padang, right? And, you know, you cannot be just on social media all the time, but you also have to be on the ground to be with these young people, to these young politicians, to these young voters, for them to be actively involved. So if you try to intertwine, you know, and incorporate this too, I feel that this is where we will have more youth participation in politics. And the last thing that I would like to highlight is that it is now the time for young politicians, be it the elder politicians or the new politicians, to actually start upskilling their skills on digital communication skills. It is a new skill that everyone needs to learn. I mean, if you look at TikTok, God, it took me after a year when TikTok was at its hype, then I was like, okay, maybe we need to start put things on TikTok, right? And how do you edit it? How do you put effects? I mean, these are the things that, you know, it's hard for you to, and then you have to learn how to do your reels, your stories, and whatnot, and everything has to be under 1 minute. So yes, this is how social media has actually impacted my political career over the last 8 years. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Joanna. Well, thank you to all for your remarks on social media. Just going more beyond social media and more broadly on technology, I may be traveling back to Africa. So either Nerima or Jokate, if you want to start on one of the key challenges. What are the key challenges that you observe, how technology can impact young people looking to engage in politics?
Okay, so first off, I would also like to add that through my political career, Joanne has had an 8-year political career. Mine has been, more, I think, around 6 years. I've been able to catapult whatever campaigns that I initiated and gain support online. And through that, I've been able to have a very successful campaign that built the first girls' school in an area where girls' education is not a priority. And to date, the school has 800 girls who are attending the school and pursuing their careers. But also, we were able to start a campaign online around ecotourism, sustainability, through our forest reserves that initially had around 250 people visiting that place. When we started the campaign, we were able to reach around 20,000 people visiting the place in a year. Yeah, so social media is impactful. If you are able to go against the odds, which are there. Because when you start a campaign, and this is the downside of social media, there will come people who will discourage you or who will form targeted propaganda. Because, you know, politics is polarizing. So people, you know, just form groups and start targeted propaganda and say, oh, she's doing this, she's perhaps doing this for her own good. So these are things that you need to navigate. The challenges of technology back home, I would say the infrastructure. The infrastructure is not, the network is not, perhaps in rural areas, is not as strong as compared to urban areas, but also the costs of technology for the users, the youth who use it, but also patriarchy. You'll be shocked back home, you still have women who need to ask their spouses, their husbands, to access phones. They need to use their husband's phone to be able to access internet or to be able to just be connected online. But this transcends to just show us how much it's important to also empower underprivileged groups as youth and women. Because in part of youth, we also have women who are young and who are married at young ages and who find themselves in these predicaments. But also just the digital gap that's there, the knowledge, how knowledgeable people are. I once attended a lecture and they spoke of Alejandros. Alejandros are people who are like middlemen. If you want to use, if you want to gain a particular skill or to be able to use a particular service online, you would need a middleman to help you access and navigate through that technology. And they call them Alejandros. I don't know why. Maybe Alejandro could help us understand why. So since this is very new, so, okay, we're trying to grasp economic emancipation. And now we're trying to grasp the changes that come with technology and the digitalized economies. So it's quite a lot. So I still feel like we still need support from civil societies, from international organizations, to help see how we can better equip, especially developing countries, to be able to have a vast network that spans across the urban and rural areas, so as to help women and youth to get access to technology, but also not only access, but also the right set of skills that will help them now tap into that space and make good use of it. But also I feel like it's very important for young people to be properly engaged, to be able to use technology positively as responsible citizens. Because now we're seeing a surge of young people who are not using these spaces and these technologies responsibly. If you're able to use technology, be it, I know you hate artificial intelligence to talk about it, but these are things that are there. If people are able to use technology to manipulate, misinform, that has more to do with their character, their values, and upbringing. So technology is a tool that we use to equip ourselves, to better ourselves. But we cannot eschew the fact that we need to nurture young people. Good manners still matter. These are basic things that perhaps we tend to forget, but they still matter. How we rear our kids, what values do we instill in them, the kind of people we try to create and mold, the character, the personalities that we give them, and so that they don't lose themselves online and try to find themselves online, which in most cases is deceiving and places them out of character. And we talk about peer pressure. Now maybe we have online pressure to be seen, to be heard. And in most cases, they tend to want to be seen and heard by doing things that are not appropriate, that are not helpful. And this could easily translate into our elections and how they participate in the democratic processes. If you have young people who could easily manipulate, who knows what they could do during elections? They could misinform the young people, to perhaps choose someone that we all know is not capable, or they could just use whatever skills they have to tamper with the process, the electoral processes themselves. So I feel like still, as much as we want young people to gain digital skills, to take use of technology, we shouldn't forget to instill values of being responsible. Because we might enact laws, pass legislature, and have various policies to guide how we use technology, but at the end of the day, we all know how the informal has a way of overcrowding the formal. Informal normally is very powerful. And in today's day, if someone is able to misinform, creating havoc, and okay, after 10, I was like, okay, we need to penalize this person, but havoc has already been created. And the misinformation has already soared across the various social media platforms. So one, we have a job to do because technology has proven to have its goods, to help us connect and tap various possibilities and advance our economies. But it does come with a huge amount of responsibility that we need to help young people understand the impacts of not using this positively and how the impacts it could have on their lives, on the democracies, on electoral processes, but also swaying from the initial target where we thought these technology, digital space would enable us to be able to better ourselves. But I say this because also when it comes to young women's participation, many of them are hindered because already we are in a society that there are different phrases that are set to make women not take up space. I recently heard a TED Talk where the lady spoke of biker face. And that later translated into imposter syndrome. And now we have bullies online. But all these things are things that are set to create a demarcation for a certain targeted group to not fully participate online or in these technologies. So we have to create a space that is safe for young women by giving education, but also by not supporting misinformation and young people who use social media, who use technology to take us back, And this is very serious. Back home, now you have groups of people who can just wake up in the morning, literally, it's now a career. They can wake up in the morning and start tearing down people. Proper defamation. They target, it's like you are targeted online. Jokate, today we're going to deal with you. And as much as we have laws, but it's traumatizing just to read stuff about yourself online, exposed to everyone out there. And deep down, you're trying your best, to be of good conduct, to be of purpose, and to deliver. But people can just gang up on you online and make it a mission. In the morning, and the 8 a.m., we are starting with you. And they announce themselves. Like, it's that serious. So we really need to do something about it. And the time is now before it gets worse. I feel like it's getting worse as the days go by. And instead of technology and digitalization enabling young people to use the space, there's a huge risk of young people now detracting and saying maybe this is not a place for us to engage. And that is so likely, especially for groups of young women who are targets.
Yeah.
Sexual harassment, if you love yourself, you know how we love ourselves nowadays and we show it. We don't shy away from showing that. And they use it against you.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we need to look at.
Yeah, but maybe I totally concur with my colleague Jo Kate. I think if I were to add on to that, you know, despite the advancement that since the 19th century, right, and since we're talking about women, and all of us here are women, right, and we are him. And thank you, Santiago, for also moderating the women here. We need more men to also be involved, you know, in this kind of conversation. So we, despite the advancements since the 19th century, right, in terms of gender equality still remains. Right, but it's only during the recent, you know, over the last decade that we have seen that more young women have actually spoke up, right, and to be involved in politics. Now, of course, economic engagement, reproductive rights as well, right, and political representations are areas where women have more obstacles than men. And I'm also talking about this, Jo Kate, also from my experience. And I think, you know, when we had a brief conversation earlier and we talked about this, that these are the barriers that we are facing. It's hindering us. So, and the thing about politics is that it is seen as a big boys game. I mean, I'm sad to say, but in Malaysia, you know, from the context of Malaysia, we only have 12% women of representing us in parliament, of, you know, out of the 50% of women that we have. I mean, this is a total underrepresentation. And I like one of the young leaders that have spoken earlier, the opening, and she said that we are the marginalized young. This is the young people, but also I think this includes the women, that we are the young we are the marginalized majority. And that's a paradox. So now, and I think that there is an increasing realization, of course, about this, and I hope that for us to reach critical mass, we need to have more young women and as well as young people to be involved in politics, and then we'll see that there will be also a shift in our political landscape, not only in where I come from, but in a global aspect. Yeah, just to add on that, yeah.
Yeah, not to take away from what you said, I've personally experienced this. When I first got appointed by the president to be the district commissioner of a district called Kisarawe in Pwani region, people took online to attack. It was, to say the least, crazy. And all because I came from a different industry. I did entertainment. You know, when you're young, you navigate, you're trying to find yourself, and you're trying to tap into different opportunities. Yeah, so I was telling it to my friend here from Kenya that I've hosted shows on television. I've been mentioned on Forbes for my fashion and beauty achievements. I've had a brand. And people love to label women. Yeah. Like you only belong to a certain sect. Yes. And like politics is only for particular people. But what they didn't acknowledge is I'm well educated as well. I actually went to school and I did very well in school. And perhaps I wanted to also become a lecturer. So people like to box people and to extend their perhaps insecurities, and they feel like once they bring you down, then they're able to erase you from from the site. So I say this very passionately because I experienced it. I experienced huge backlash. And imagine this is a president appointing you, it's an appointing office, high level, but people just go online. Like, it was a whole week of personal attacks. And no one wanted to give me room, and it was just a few people, no? But they have power. You know how a group of few people, when they gang up and come together, have the ability of tearing us down. So, and that's why I say it's very important for young women especially, due to historical factors, to be given the opportunity to be brave, because it's very hostile.
Can I jump onto that?
It's very hostile, sure.
So we had to form an army. We call it the Women at Web Army, which is basically a group when we see a woman being bullied, we come together and organize and create the pushback. And we've done it for many women. And in Tanzania, I believe Maria, she's very well known for that army. And unfortunately, what I'm observing, because I'm on the outside, but we work very closely with politicians, is you're absolutely right, Jokate, where you say there is a rise of bloggers. And this also related to the high unemployment rate and the high young population. So it is becoming a business. So in 2022, we saw a rise of bullying in our elections in Kenya. We tried to flag it with Meta. They tried to create these lexicons to try and stop it. But what we're not discussing is content moderation. Now, content moderation, to be able to flag that someone is insulting you, a lot of the insults are not in English. A lot of the insults are in our local languages. In Kiswahili, unakuita vitu vingine. So they're in other languages. And Meta has a case currently happening in Kenya, where due to content moderation, 3 of them. And you asked a question on Africa, huge continent. Countries like Nigeria have over 100 million citizens, and that's one country representing almost 3 in other continents. And so Africa is massive. The language, our countries, in my country alone, there are like 50 different tribes and languages, 50. So Meta is not going to really invest in knowing every single language and moderating and monitoring and flagging and reporting. These are the things we're not discussing. And even when we talk about that, why this matters is one of the cases is in Ethiopia, where a professor, very, very flamboyant, outspoken, was speaking on the political issues. And it was posted on a Facebook group that had 50,000 followers. It was posted his house address. His son, Abram, tried to flag Facebook multiple times on the report. My dad is in danger, and he just kept hitting report. And of course, no response. 2 weeks later, his dad's assassinated outside of his gate. This is the case right now on Ethiopia. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up, something definitely needs to be done. And when you're dealing with majority countries where the population is majorly young and political leaders have followers of up to 5 million and plus, a simple comment can lead to someone's death and actual civil war. This happened in South Sudan in 2012. So we don't have to go far to realize that Facebook can actually cause conflict. And it's people's lives at stake. And when we recognize that and have even big tech companies recognize the importance of navigating even the bullying, and something else I've noticed, women actually become more masculine online to survive. This is behavior change, which again, we're not talking about. And so not only is it changing behavior, I know a young minister in Nairobi, and she has a male account. So she calls herself Alan. No one knows she owns it. Super popular. She'll talk over there how she feels like talking. And then she has the account as a minister, where everyone judges her and everyone is sort of bullying her, and that's her work account. But when someone comes to her work account to bully her, she logs on to Alan. And she will use Alan to defend herself. Because she knows I cannot defend myself as a young female minister. And these are the things that I'm like, oh my God, this is like a psychological challenge here that we're actually not talking about. And even you as young women, I can't even imagine in terms of family or, the kind of pedestal, or in terms of livelihood, motherhood, I cannot. And it suddenly becomes everyone's opinion on you. And so it's challenging because our social media platforms is actually changing our behavior.
Just to wrap it up with Alejandra, just despite all the recent progress that already, for example, Joanna has mentioned, women are like the Hispano, are very underrepresented in politics. What strategies or approaches have you observed or even used that can engage women in formal politics?
Well, thank you. I will say that I come from Costa Rica. That's a little country, the smallest country in Central America. So the context is a little bit different. But normally in Costa Rica, for example, 95% of youth has social media. And 88% of all population has access to internet. So that's a way to speak with people. But when you are in an election, or when you are in a running for in the electoral role, you have to understand to whom you want to talk to. For example, in 2018, we were clear that we want to talk with people who were young, because the political party in that moment, we were like in a very difficult context, because all the country was polarized. So there were people who were the conservative and those ones that were the progressive part of the country. So how we can speak to people? How can speak with youth, thinking in them like they were all similar? Because we are not similar. Youth are different, and the challenge for us, it was to think in how to speak with them in different ways, and how to speak with them and make them know that we are not going only to talk about, for example, equal marriage. So sometimes when we went to, for example, indigenous territories, they thought that we were going to talk about equal marriage to them, and that was completely unuseful for them, because they said, well, I don't need equal marriage here in my territory, I need other type of information. I need, for example, a school. That's my direct need now. So sometimes when we speak in social media, when we use new technologies, we spread just a message. And we have to know how to speak or send different message to different population. And that has a challenge really big for us. And then I would like to say that when we talk about women in politics, I think that social media, yes, it could be very difficult, very dangerous, but it is a tool that we have to use. Because women doesn't have financial resources to run the campaigns. So how I can speak as a political woman, as a political young woman, to people, and how I can reach them if the regions are so long from my place, or how I can arrive to them. So I think that social media is a very important channel. I mean, we have been talking about that in our political party, and pay advertising in social media is cheaper than going to the TV. I mean, I have no possibility to be in TV, but in the political party, in the big political parties in Costa Rica, they are going to have advertising on TV, on radio. We are not going to have that as young political women because we don't have money. We don't have the money to do that. So I just wanted to give you an example because I think that's very important. On 2018, we were running also the election for president. That year, we were talking about how to monitor the proposals of all people who were running, how to monitor in the social media. And we created an initiative with a group of girls from civil society, but also from political parties. And that initiative was called Femin Index. It was a feminist index to know how candidates are going to speak in the campaign and how the media is going to speak in the campaign. So, for example, we take all the ideas that had the candidates, and we start to give them like a punctuation. So we did this ranking of the candidates to let him know if your positions are likely or no with gender equality. And also when they say something that we consider sexism, we decide to put this message in our website. We call it in Spanish, machifrase. It's a sexy phrase that is sexy, with sexism. So this machifrase was shown in our social media, but also in our website. And this machifrase, it was a very good tool for people to let them who is the person who's speaking with you, who is the person who is going to be the president of the country. And also, for example, I'm going to say something a little bit polemic. But for example, in Costa Rica in 2022, our president was elected, Rodrigo Chavez, and all people knows in Costa Rica that he was a president who had a record for being violent with girls and women. So we decided to put this into the light. I mean, media has to speak about that. And also people has to know that the president has some history and records about harassment, for example. And so we use this tool for us. I think it's very, very useful, a Femin Index. And we really like it because we have been working in Femin Index. Well, we did it in 2018. And then we got to the next level in 2022. Because in 2018, we just did it in social media. And after that, we created a website. And people go there and they can see the positions. They can see also the history, for example, of the candidates about if they have been in a problem with sexual harassment, or you have been problems with domestic violence, for example. All that information is going to be there about the candidates. And we tried also to do it with the congresswoman and congressmen, but it's a lot of information. And we tried to figure it out how to make people to access this platform, because also when you create apps or you have a website, it is a challenge to make people go there. So we are working that. I imagine that on 2026 that we are going to run an election again. We have created more tools to do that.
Yes, thank you very much to all. I think we might have time for one or two questions from the audience. So anyone from the audience who would like to ask a question now to our panelists today, I will come over with the microphone. If you just raise your hand, yes.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Oh, let me stand. So yeah. Thank you. It has been a very wonderful session. These are powerful women, I must say. But I just want to ask a question from you. You said something, and I quite agree with you when you were saying is the fact that we are talking about people that are being marginalized. We talked a lot about young people. But in this, even within these young people, the most affected people are the women. So I have this concept that I think, I don't know if it can actually work, but I just want to, like, an advice from you, being a politician. What do you think, like, a better way to ensure that even when you are discussing that, oh, young people are being marginalized, what are the better way you can actually find a way to make women to be more visibility in your advocacy? So that it's, from my own personal experience, let me just say this first, I would have actually loved the advice, like the kind of, what's it called, idea that was pushed earlier by my sister from Kenya, saying that if a governor is not doing well, we can actually put something that, oh, this person, all of shame. If he's doing well, we can put all of fame. Is there a way we can actually do this within the political party as well? Oh, your political party is not women-friendly. We can actually push something to say, oh, this party is women-friendly, this party is not women-friendly, to let people know that these are the kind of person you are. If you are voting for you, we are voting for you based on this. If you are not supporting you, we are not supporting you based on this. So, as a politician, what's your thought about that? Will that work within the political context? Thank you.
Right. So I think because you are looking at me, then maybe I could just start answering that. Okay, there are two things that I would like to highlight here. Indeed, yes, we are the marginalized majorities, right? Not only the young people, but also the women now. And I think that we're facing the same issues between these two, these two problems. So, like for example, for youth, right? And women, in fact, I see that there is a similarity of why it hinders their political participation. But the way I think for us to move forward is two things. First and foremost, I think it is important for us to start normalizing youth and women participation. Okay, because coming from a country that we have the lowest participation of women and as well as young leaders in the Commonwealth country, in fact, right? And I think this is where we need to have more visible young people and as well as young leaders to be seen as taking, leadership. And I think that everyone, that phrase that everyone is talking about now is to take up space, right? This is what we have to do. We have to start strategizing for normalization for women and as well as youth to be in politics. And of course, this is a cause and effect factor. You see, the more you see young people, the more you see women participating in politics, then you will see more young people who actually will be actively being in politics. That is how it's a cause and effect. And the second thing I would like to highlight again is going back to the political or the institution or the societal framework that we are living in this world today. And I think to level the playing field, we need to have more, again, as I said, visible and brilliant young men and women to engage in this. And I also believe that there is a compelling need, right? And it is imperative for political organization. So let's start off with political organization, because everything, for you to form a government, it starts with politics, right? The manifestos and whatnot, to have an agenda that defends, first of all, democratic system, because one of the reason that I've seen, on being on the ground, is that there is an institutional mistrust, right, among these young people. Of course, in my country, there are lots of, issues of misuse of powers and corruption and whatnot. And these are the reasons why young people and women, I suppose, of course, if I were to add that, women are also a victim of objectification, right? And at the same time, young people have actually swayed away from politics is because that they find that they can't relate themselves with, their participation in politics and how does politics or policies can affect their lives, right? So we need to have more young people, young women there, and as well as an entity with an agenda to promote good governance, right? And to prevent trust deficit among voters. And then we will see more young women and young people, including men, right, to be involved in politics. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, so we have time for one more question, if anyone from the audience would like to take the floor. Yes.
Hello, my name is Jiwon Lee, and thank you for all the presentation. It was very impressive. And in Korea, I think for the Korean young men, especially, they think that they are the victim of feminism, and that affected affected a lot last presidential election. And it made a huge separation between young Korean women voters and men voters. And through media, you said that we need more men and women to be engaged in to for the young women candidates to be elected. So how can we use social media to persuade? How can I say? I can't find the word. Yeah. Persuade people, young people, to be. It's a bit nervous. I can find that word. To be engaged in.
Right.
Yeah. To the election.
Is it to me again? Or anyone would say? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's also a saying in Kenya, where the current deputy president's wife, the second lady's office, her main campaign is the boy child, because she does feel, especially men, they're being left out of the picture, and we've been focusing too much on women. So that's something that we're also currently working around and building a narrative around. So what we have learned is the community engagements in terms of education. So yes, using social media, but also combining. I'll give an example. We can have a town hall, or we call them baraza, which is basically where elders in a village sort of sit down at the end of the week to discuss, what happened in our community. There's normally a chief there, and a lot of elderly men and also young people, women, are able to join. So a lot of these people, because it's rural areas, do not have access to the internet or smartphone devices. So we have created a hybrid sort of system where they're able to watch like what we're doing, because we've projected a screen in terms of this is what a young woman, in terms of a member of parliament, and this is what she's doing in Nakuru County. We have produced and partner with DocuBox, which produces film that is able to show the actualization of how women in leadership leads to progress. And we have learned that when people watch a film, they identify better. The film is normally played both online and live stream in the community. And it's also a good space for people who have access to devices to talk about it. So that, their personal touch that was being mentioned earlier is still so important, so that people feel connected to the issue. And they also see a woman leader differently and more personally, because unfortunately, like when I talked about women in leadership becoming a little masculine, and even when you think of the saying iron lady, why is she iron? It's like it's created to be this cold, and we don't want them, they're terrible for us, and the community can't survive with them. So we have to bring this education back, but not really looking at your learning right now. It needs to look like, no, this is community, this is us engaging, this is dialogue, this is just learning about another community and what they're up to and what it has brought about. That has brought significant change without talking about women in leadership, women in power, they have to be there. And I see that also changing the conversation to having champions who are men. Yeah. And when they see that a woman in power actually benefits the entire community, everyone is on board. Because everyone wants to live in a better community. I think that's the narrative that's worked for us.
Thank you very much to you, to all four of you. It's very funny that you all come from different places and you all bring your own experiences, but then at the end of the day, you can agree on a lot of things. Thank you as well to all of you for attending this session.